My name is Brent Friedman, and I'm a Transmedia addict. And I'm going to lighten the tone a little bit here. I am the co-founder of Electric Farm Entertainment, which is a new media studio down in Santa Monica, California. We produce transmedia projects with some old media companies. And so far, we've been pretty successful. Our first two shows have aggregated about 30 million views worldwide, which I think is a good testament to the power of transmedia. Probably asking what the bleep is transmedia. Well, first of all, let me clear up one misconception. The truth is, before we take a look at what transmedia is and try and define it, let's break it down into its component parts. And the first thing I want to look at is, who is the audience? In fact, actually the better question is, where is the audience? And the answer is, they're everywhere. They're always on. And one of the things that's happening right now is there's an interesting feedback loop that's happening between the audience and technology, and how technology is influencing the audience's choices. One of the things that we've started to see is that intuitive technology has started to expand the audience. When you think about it, the first audience members come of age when they can click their first button. And we can basically hold them as an audience member until that last fateful logout. The other thing that's happening is the audience has getting access to multiple media platforms. And each one of those platforms represents a different niche audience. Now, you probably say, well, what is a media platform? Essentially, it starts off with the three major screens. You've got television, you've got computers, you've got handheld devices, and then you've got some of your old media outlets. All of these platforms are essentially an opportunity to deploy some aspect of transmedia storytelling. The way I like to think of it is you have a huge storyverse that you've created, and you pull out a slice or a section of that storyverse, and you can deploy it on different platforms. So for instance, I can take my A story, and on a television series, I can talk about the hero's adventure. But then I can supplement that with a B story from the villain's point of view, and I can tell that in webisodes online. Then I can do a backstory of the whole storyverse through a mobile game on your handheld device. What that does is it creates a sense of need for the story to be what I call fractal. Fractal essentially is something that is self-similar, that every piece represents the whole. And the reason that this is important is if the story gets spread off all of these platforms, each one has to represent the larger storyverse. It has to be unique, but it has to be consistent. All right, we're about the halfway point here, so I'm going to throw out a pop quiz. What have we learned so far? Well, I think we can say that there is no sexual discrimination in transmedia. We know that there's a wide and wired demographic. We know that it's told, the stories are told across all the screens. We know that it utilizes multiple story slices. We know that those story slices need to be fractal. And most importantly, there has to be a very high non-suckage factor for the content to actually become sticky. Now you're probably thinking, wow, Brent, you're blowing my mind. This transmedia thing, it's so complicated. Actually, it's really not. It's pretty simple. What you need to start off with is you have to have that entrepreneurial spirit. You have to want to get into the kitchen and roll your sleeves up a little bit. At Electric Farm, our core philosophy starts with what I call 3D storytelling. Now, the ingredients are pretty simple. You want to start off with something that has some universal appeal. You want to create something with what I call a deep mythology, that there's a lot of depth and texture to the thinking. You also want to kind of have something that's designed to be deployed as a fracture narrative that can be dispersed on these multiple platforms I'm talking about. And then ideally, just a little bit of interactivity to create audience interaction. Well, based on what we learned from Afterworld and Gemini Division, we feel that now moving into some of our new projects, we're trying to apply all of that, those lessons that have come from those first two projects. In our new project called Valemont, which is something you can see when we started to put the project together, we tried to use our formula of 3D storytelling. We took something that was very high concept, doing a new spin on the vampire myth. We've created a very extensive timeline that goes back thousands of years. We've added a whole bunch of actual scientific research to make it seem real. And we've created what I call a Rashomon narrative, which is we've created a narrative that has multiple points of view, so that there is a singular truth, but that each character's point of view is valid. Most importantly, we've added some super hot bods. Now, we've taken all of this and we've done two other very important things. If you're creating entertainment, the idea is you want to both entertain people, but you have to get to them. And one of the challenges with doing something online or within these multiple platforms, how do you reach them? Well, as I said before, Electric Farm has found that the best thing to do with new media is to still utilize the strengths of old media. Old media in the form of MTV they create a distribution channel for us. They get us to the audience that we want to be speaking to. And through our brand partner, Verizon, we're getting a lot of really targeted marketing for the project. So what we come out of this with is three things that are really important to what I believe is not just transmedia, but new media. Our content is built modularly. So our episodes are actually 2 to 3 minutes long. But they're designed in such a way that they can be compiled together into 15-minute blocks, half-hour blocks, and eventually into a 2-hour movie. What that allows us to do is create different revenue streams so that we can have it air interstitially on television, on broadband, on mobile, or we can sell it around the world as 15-minute blocks, half-hour blocks of actual on-air programming, or we can create a downloadable movie version of the content. And what I'm going to show you is how I've taken our formula for kind of transmedia storytelling and applied it to the kind of the schematic for what we're doing with Vailmont. We're using the online platform to talk about and reveal the backstory of the main character's brother through a very elaborate ARG that's employing both Twitter and Facebook. Then on air, the first 12 webisodes of the show will actually air on MTV, interspersed into their highest rated shows, The Hills and The City. After the 12th episode, there's a huge cliffhanger, and that will drive all viewing onto MTV.com from that point on. We're using the mobile platform as a way to extend the narrative and give viewers actual access to the main character through auxiliary and special content through the Verizon VCast platform. So, where is this all headed? It's an excellent question. One of the things that I see is that with this always-on audience that we have, I think that they're going to become increasingly empowered by tech advances. And I think what that's going to do is it's going to start driving the audience to work more cooperatively with the content creators. And I think we're going to start increasing interactivity, and we together, the audience and the creators, are going to start building what I call a transmedia storyverse. And the way I see this and the ideal that I'm working towards is, from the very beginning, I wanted to create this kind of synthesis or convergence between TV and video games, where we can ultimately create, instead of just stories, we create a persistent digital universe. And what I mean by that is, it's a world where it's seeded with a bunch of story ideas. It's something that's always there, always online, and it's constantly evolving and iterating based on the input of the audience and the creators. So where this all goes, I think ultimately, if you take the time to build a large transmedia storyverse, and you build it correctly and you deploy it correctly, and you're lucky enough to get some brand sponsorship and the right distribution channels, I think there is a huge audience out there for it. I think it's getting larger every day, and I think they are becoming hungry for this kind of content, this kind of interactivity, and this kind of connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you.